Hey friend, have you ever wondered what kinky sex is and whether or not it is for Christians? Stay tuned, it's what we're going to be talking about. Welcome back to the Road to Happiness podcast. We're Josh and Cassie Spurlock, your hosts, and we're thrilled that you're hanging out with us as we look at what the Bible and neuroscience has to say about your happiness. We want to do a shout out to our sponsor, My Counselor Online, the leading provider of Christian counseling online. If you find yourself in a season of life where having somebody come alongside you to navigate the obstacles between you and experiencing the fullness of life that Jesus designed you for, the Christian counselors at My Counselor Online would be thrilled to serve you, your marriage, your family. Check them out at My Counselor Online and stay tuned for the episode. All right, we are on to chapter 19 of this series that we've been doing on the Feeling Sexy book that Cassie and I wrote, really consolidating some 13,000 hours of sex therapy into a how-to guide for sexual confidence and desire. And in chapter 19, man, we're
going to get kinky.
We're going to get kinky. Yeah. I think I read a lot in this space of sex therapy and sex education, and I'm not familiar with any other Christian resource that kind of goes into the detail that we do in this chapter. And if you are,
put it in the comments because we would love to check it out.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
We like to know who our people are talking about the same things that we are.
Yep.
Connect with them.
Got to keep learning.
Yeah.
Always learning. But here's the caveat here. If you are convinced as a Christian that kinky sex is completely off limits and you can't be convinced otherwise, and you think it's terrible and shameful to even talk about, you should stop watching or listening to this right now. This episode is not for you, Ned, and you're just gonna make yourself upset. So farewell. We'll see you. God bless. And
I think it helps maybe to define what is kinky sex.
We should define what is kinky sex. What do you think kinky sex is, Ned? What do you
This is what we did last night.
Should put it in the comments. Would love to hear what your definition of kinky sex is before we spoil it and tell you. You know, kinky is an undefined term.
Yeah.
Really.
It's kind of like a...
Yeah, all it means is unusual or uncommon, which is completely relative, right?
Exactly.
So like for some, anything other than missionary position sex would be kinky, right? Because it's unusual or uncommon for them or their friend group or the cultural context that they're in. And so, you know, that probably means that you're kinky already by that definition, right? But it is intentionally kind of vague there, right? Yeah. Because it varies from person to person as to what you would consider to be kinky.
Out the normal, yeah.
Yeah. So by that definition, there's a whole lot that falls within kinky.
I know, right?
If we say like anything other than missionary sex is kinky, then, you know, everybody's a little kinky, right? Everybody's got their kink.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, I remember when our friend told me that in a sex therapy training class. Tickled me so much.
It's been said. It's been said. So how do we create parameters then? You know, if we want to think about, should Christians be talking about sex? We've answered that time and again and said, hey, sex is God's idea. If anybody ought to be talking about it, it ought to be God's people. We ought to be speaking God's truth about sex. We ought to be communicating what the Bible teaches about sex. So what does it say about kinky sex?
Same thing it says about all the other pieces of sex.
Same thing it says about every other kind of sex. So if you've been following the podcast for any length of time, you've heard this time and again. But we're going to keep saying it because it's just so important. And, you know, we can dialogue around this. You know, I've got an undergrad in biblical languages. I love the scriptures. I'm dedicated to teaching them faithfully And so, we can have conversations with people that disagree around these things, but let's take it back to the text and see what the scriptures say and allow them to speak for themselves, as opposed to eisegesis, which is a fancy theological term for when we read into the scriptures meaning instead of extract meaning out of the scriptures and from the scriptures. And if you just allow the scriptures to speak for themselves, the framework that God provides for us for what healthy, good sex looks like is a 3-question test. One is it consensual? What does consensual mean? Well, consensual means that we are agreeing without compulsion, without pressure, without demand, without manipulation or coercion of any sort to engage in an activity, right? And I think this is super important because, while people may communicate, hey, we're following a Christian sexual ethic because we, only have sex with each other, or that we don't do this or we don't do that, and so therefore we're following a Christian sexual ethic. In sex therapy and in marriage therapy, I have met with so many couples where they have violated consent.
Yeah.
Like where there's this, here's an example, right? This would be a common and annoying thing that a Christian sex therapist experience is we have a couple come in, and typically it's the husband, and I say typically meaning 100% of the times of my experience. 13,000 hours of experience, 100% of the time I have been the husband.
Guys are getting a bad rap here.
I'm just saying, right? And so it is what it is. Well, take and use a passage like Paul in Corinthians and saying that our bodies are not our own, and therefore you, wife, your body is not your own, and therefore you have to do what I want you to do sexually, whether that be in sexual activity or frequency or anything pertaining to sex, right? And that just makes me want to punch someone in the mouth. Because it violates the heart of God.
Yeah.
And it is so contrary to what the scriptures teach about loving one another and about serving our spouse. You never see Jesus dragging anybody anywhere, demanding, manipulating, coercing anyone. And when we do that with our spouse, we're not loving our spouse like Christ loved the church. It is not okay. And so that would be an example that I commonly experience where consent is violated. There's this pressure and demand around sex that takes away a person's freedom to say no. And when the scriptures are used and violence is done to the scriptures to demand or coerce, like that's just unacceptable. It is not the heart of our God. And if you've had that experience where someone has communicated that to you, either a spouse or a pastor or a spiritual leader, then I just want to tell you that's not okay.
Yeah. If you were a good wife, you would do this. This is supporting your husband. This is what you need to do. Any of those pieces.
Yeah. It's not what the Bible says, right?
You're your own person. You're your own delighted daughter before the king. And he cares very much about the experience for you.
Yeah. And when we don't honor consent and the other principles that create the framework for a God-honoring sexual relationship, then it robs both of us of having the very beautiful and fun and delightful thing that God's designed sex to be for us. So when we talk about kink, I think it's important to communicate that because, it can be the case at times where you have somebody who wants to experiment with something kinky and their spouse isn't comfortable with it, and they use coercion, demand, the scriptures in some twisted way in order to try to get their way, and that's selfish and not honoring. So,
which I think is a different conversation than I want to try something. Say I brought something to you, and I was like, I want to try something.
Right.
And you were like,
right on.
Yeah. No, in this example, you were like, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Oh,
it would be,
I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah. It would be okay for me, for us, in the emotional safety of our relationship, for me to say, I'm curious about that. Like, tell me more. Like,
right.
Not necessarily for me to try to get my way, but like to understand the experience for both of us.
Yeah.
And yes, I do care about experiencing this thing that I think is interesting, but I care about like something that might be getting in the way of our sexual freedom and relationship together.
Right. Growing together. It's in the context of safety, respect, love for one another, curiosity about each other's experience, that sort of thing. Right. Absolutely. So consensual, monogamous, and mutual. Like those are the three tests for, is this, within the bounds that God has given us for enjoying sex together, for a healthy sexual, God-honoring sexual relationship. So we talked about consensual, in-depth, monogamous, pretty straightforward, meaning God designed sex between you and your spouse. Right? That sex is designed for within the safety of marriage.
In the covenant.
In the covenant relationship of marriage. And so is the sexual act, the sexual engagement, is it just between you and your spouse? Is it monogamous? Okay. And then lastly, is it mutual? Meaning, does it feel good? Is it enjoyable? Is it something that both of you derive pleasure from?
Yeah. Does it benefit both of you?
Yeah. Does it benefit both of you? Now, we'll talk and unpack, what that means in detail as it applies to some stuff that we experiment with, right? Because sometimes we experiment with stuff and there's different reasons why we might do something sexually there. And it's, maybe more, a giving of something to our spouse, and it is more pleasurable for them physically than it is for us, but still a turn on and enjoyable for us, even though it is not the same physical pleasure.
It's like the chapter where we talked about oral sex.
Right.
Like it should be beneficial to both of us. It shouldn't be like, I'm going to do this for you, but I don't like it.
And it's terrible for me.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And it does violence in some way to me.
Not only that, but don't do things in your sexual relationship that feel icky because it wires that together in a way that sabotages you.
Right. We totally don't want that. But sometimes we do engage in things that are mutually enjoyable, but for different reasons or in different ways for each of us. But they're still positive. They're still good, even though they may be different, why it's positive or how it's positive for each of us. So when we say mutual, it doesn't mean that it has to be the same experience for both of us, for it to be mutually enjoyable for both of us.
And something I love about that is the diversity in the sexual relationship that provides. Because if it always had to be the same for both of us all the time, that would make the box really small. But actually the box is, well, I don't really know where the edges of the box are.
But it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. The diversity and creativity that God has made possible for us within the confines of the structure and the safety that he creates sex for is enormous.
Yeah.
Like we tend to put God's design for sex in such a small box and define it by all the don'ts around it. And most of the don'ts are just made up by people in their church tradition or cultural traditions or family traditions.
They had their reasons, but we don't have to receive them as the gospel.
They're not from the Bible, and they are not, God's word on the matter.
Yeah.
And so the truth is that within this consensual, monogamous, and mutual framework is a whole lot of playground
Yeah.
to explore and enjoy together.
I was thinking, like, if you are reading this chapter and thinking about kink, like, if you have thought of this, like, if there's something that comes to mind and you're like, I wonder if it would be interesting if I tried that. God has thought of it. Like, you can think of it because he has allowed your brain to be able to think of it. And so he's such a wildly creative God. Like, thinking about the diversity of all the things he created. We just took a trip. We saw a different part of the world and we saw so many different interesting things versus what we're used to here at home. And he created all of those. And so just thinking, like, he's really invitational and allows us as image bearers to engage that creative side. And, like, it's just, there's not limits. Like, we couldn't possibly exhaust in our lifetime the opportunities for creativity within the sexual relationship.
Yeah, and he's not threatened by our creativity.
Right.
He's not surprised by our desires.
It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you thought that.
And he's not ashamed of our curiosity.
Yeah.
Like, these are all aspects of who he made us. He created us in his image, and he's a creative God. That he created us for pleasure. We go into depth in other chapters and other episodes around the undeniable medical facts of God's designing our bodies for pleasure, and women more so than men. Not because he likes women more than men. Let's check out that episode. But it's true. It's just a medical fact. So God has created this playground for us to explore and enjoy together, and he wants for us to continue over the course of our lifetime to continue to have new experiences and enjoy sex more and more.
Yeah.
So
such a sweet thought.
Yeah, I think that's foundation. We want to talk through that theologically a little bit in order to create the space for, a little spicier conversation where we go, well, what does that mean specifically for some different things when it comes to sex? So let's talk a little bit about dirty talk.
Let's talk a little bit
about dirty talk.
First, I just want to say, if you're going to engage dirty talk, highly recommend you use your imagination and think about the things and then practice them out loud.
Totally. Such a practical practice thing.
Yes.
Like, it is, like, if you're going to, a pro tip here on, developing dirty talk in a way that feels fun and playful, do just what Cassie said. Practice by yourself. Practice saying the things out loud that you think you might want to say with your spouse, to get used to hearing your own voice saying those things.
Right.
And just practice saying them out loud and in different ways and at different volumes, different, speech nuances. Like, when you get more confident in that practicing and in your fantasy space where you imagine, whether it's, just creating that fantasy and practice for connecting, whether that's in a fun time of practice where you're self-pleasuring and fantasizing and exploring and building out that experience in advance of and in preparation for sharing an experience with your spouse. Like, those are great play sandboxes in which to practice and play with those things in a way that helps cultivate confidence when you then are sharing an experience with your spouse. So absolutely. But what do we mean by dirty talk? Oh, go ahead.
The goal is to, practically do things that make this experience for you and your spouse better. Like, it's not just for you is good, but it's as a goal, as a strategy for developing that breadth of experience and confidence that you can bring, that you do bring, you inevitably bring if you do that.
You saying it's not selfish to self-pleasure?
I would say it's not selfish. Now, one of the conversations, like when we were having the talk with our kids, one of my favorite lines is if it becomes a favorite pastime, Like, if that's all you're doing, like, you can't substitute it for connection with your spouse. And I think that is, first of all, I think that's a fear. And that's why it's been such a huge, like, just don't do it in the church. Like, it wires your brain in a bad way to negate or keep your spouse out. But actually, that's not the lived experience. That's not what the research shows. That's not what the experience of all the hours you've done in therapy show. Like, that's just not real. That's a tall tale. So,
nor will you grow hair on your hands, the palms of your hands, or go blind, or anything else you might have heard.
Your great granny might have said to you about it. But no, it's actually, first of all, it's a celebration of what God gave you as a gift. And secondly, it's for the benefit of both of you. Use it, steward it wisely. Yes. I think that's what it comes, like anything in life, steward it wisely.
Yeah, we talk about it in depth in a different chapter and different episodes. So if you miss that one, you can go back and look into it. Yeah. But absolutely that, self-pleasure is a gift that God has given us. And it's a tool for cultivating a rich sexual relationship with your spouse. And like anything, it can be distorted either by, making it not monogamous, meaning bringing in pornography or something of that nature that distorts it and makes it, not good. Or if we are, instead of connecting with our spouse, we are self-pleasure in a way that detracts from or takes away from our connecting with our spouse. Then the issue is the defrauding of our spouse and the avoiding of connection. It's not, self-pleasure isn't the issue. It's how it's being engaged in a way that takes away from our marital connection with each other. And so I like to use the example sometimes of like eating pizza is not inherently sinful, right?
I love pizza.
I love pizza too. But if I steal your pizza and eat it,
I would be enraged.
No, you would be enraged. You want to see this woman angry, mess with her food. That she would take it to a next level, and that it gets intense. I can tell you from personal experience. But it's not the issue of eating pizza at that point. It's the defrauding or stealing from somebody else that is sinful in that context, not the act itself of eating pizza. And self-pleasuring is like that. Yeah. That self-pleasuring, there's absolutely nothing in the Bible that would suggest that self-pleasuring is sinful or that God is embarrassed or ashamed or disappointed. Like it's just not in the scriptures. You can't find it in that. It's not there. And everything we need to live a life that's honoring to God is within the scriptures. That is, the doctrine of the sufficiency of scripture teaches us that. So we can confidently say and know that self-pleasure in and of itself is not sinful and doesn't dishonor the heart of God. And there's a lot of context, like what we're talking, where it can be very beneficial in stewarding our sexuality in a way that benefits our spouse, benefits our marriage, celebrates sex as a gift that God gave to us individually and as a couple, and enriches our relationship with each other. So, all that to say that practicing in fantasy and with self-pleasure becomes a very strong place to build confidence and build desire that enriches then our sexual connection. But what do we mean when we talk dirty talk, right? What are we saying here, right? Horse fell in the mud,
Horse fell in the mud.
It was dirty,
It was dirty.
Right.
So dirty.
It was dirty. I had a scout leader once tell me, so you want to hear a dirty joke? And I was like, no, I don't want to hear a dirty joke.
Yeah, right.
He's like, horse fell in the mud. I'm like, it's a dirty joke. And there, it's like, it's a dad joke.
Yes, it's a dad joke.
High quality dad joke there.
Yeah.
Now, so I want to soapbox for a minute here as a biblical languages major.
I'll just take a nap.
Yeah, you take a nap for there. What do you mean? This is thrilling stuff.
It's thrilling stuff. It is thrilling stuff. But anytime you say you want a soapbox as a biblical languages major, I'm like...
That doesn't get you excited?
I mean, it is fun. But As long as you
I
don't
nerd out about this
I
stuff.
know.
It's super exciting. So I want to deep dive just real quick on Ephesians 4:29. The passage where Paul talks about unwholesome speech,
Yes.
unwholesome talk, right?
Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth.
Exactly. And so, some would use that passage as an argument against dirty talk.
For sure.
Right? Or about, using certain words, that we might call curse words or things of that nature. So you may have used that or heard that passage used to discourage that. However, you cannot get from the scriptures a blacklist of bad words not to say.
We have so many rules about this, that, and the other that you cannot.
We do.
pull
We make
from
it's
scripture.
this church tradition stuff that we add fences within the scriptures and we try to read into the text. Now we call that eisegesis, right? Where we read meaning into the text as opposed to extracting meaning out of the text. And the way we extract meaning out of a text is we use the Bible to interpret the Bible. So if we come to a passage or like something like unwholesome speech, well, what does that mean? And how do we use the Bible to define what that means? Well, it's actually made really simple in Ephesians right there in that same verse. Like if you look at it in context, Paul goes on to say what? Instead, allow the words that come out of your mouth to build one another up, right? And so for Paul, unwholesome speech was what tore the other person down. And as opposed to wholesome speech that built one another up. Right? And
It
so you're
really changes.
Completely changes the meaning.
It's not about a list of words. It's about the intent of the heart.
Yes, and how we use our words and the impact that our words have on others. Like you can totally engage in unwholesome speech without using any curse words.
People do it all the time.
All the time. Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like there's all the ways in which we as Christians or within a Christian community, we use words that condemn and shame and create judgment and tear down others without ever using a four-letter word.
Yeah.
In that. And I would argue in contrast that there's a good place four-letter word can we actually really encourage and build up another. Like it can be a really powerful, impactful way to cheer one another on to godliness and to encourage one another and to undo aloneness and to bear one another's burdens and really like in a powerful way. And in the bedroom, I would argue that there's not any words, any combination of letters or pronunciation that's off limits.
Or names.
Or names that are off limits. Like there's no combination of letters in and of itself that's inherently good or bad.
Yeah.
But only how we use them. And so if we apply the ideas of consensuality and mutuality, when it comes to our language, are the words that we use in our dirty talk, are we both comfortable with it?
Yeah.
Right? Is it consensual? Is it both mutual? Does it feel like a turn on? Does it feel energizing? Does it feed our attraction and our enjoyment and our passion for each other? Is it mutual that way? Then it's acceptable and it's good and it's God honoring. It's using our words in a wholesome way that builds up the other in our sexual experience with one another. So it's not about the words themselves. It's about the heart and it's about the impact of those words and how they impact our spouse.
Yeah.
So,
and it doesn't make you weird or like silly or not holy if you are interested in dirty talk.
Let's just get this whole silly thing out of the way because it's just silly, right?
It's so silly.
It's so silly that we get in this space where we judge what's okay, what's not okay, in a way that robs us of enjoying life and experimenting things, right? Like we we somehow think play is childish, and we forget how to play. And we kind of lose that space, and we get self-conscious to the point where we aren't willing to take risks or be vulnerable or try things or risk being silly in that. And it robs us of what we could really enjoy in our sex life if we weren't so self-conscious, let's face it.
And I think we forget because we are so focused on like maturity and being an adult and checking boxes and doing things that we forget that God actually loves the child-heartedness that he wired into us. Like, remember when Jesus said, "Let the children come to me and don't try to stop them"? Like, he loves that and invites those parts of us into that intimate relationship. And he's just delighted when we are free.
Yes.
And can just bring our real selves and our real delights. He loves that.
It's a good word. Great sex lives are built when we can shed ourselves of that self-consciousness, that sense of shame, that sense of embarrassment, and instead have freedom to explore and be curious and to try things and have them, be silly and land different than we intended. Like, that's where really robust, powerful, ever-evolving, ever-getting better sex lives are built. They're not inherited. They don't drop into us. They don't come biologically, naturally organic. Amazing sex lives are built. They're cultivated. So, that's dirty talk.
Dirty talk. Check.
What about pain? Sexy pain.
That's really messed up.
It's really... I think so. So sometimes this is a thing of curiosity for folks. Like, if this is part of your experience and you engage this, then you may be like, is this weird that I like this or that this is good? And if you've never experimented or played with any sort of pain, you may think, wow, that's weird, or that's kinky, that's way out there.
Only people that are worldly do that.
Right, yeah. They don't understand it. And I just want to pull back the veil a little bit on...
You just want to talk about the science of it.
Yeah, why is it? And how could anybody enjoy pain? I think you should pose that question to the people in your friend group who are CrossFitters. Right? If you've ever been to a CrossFit gym, or if those people are crazy in that, right? Like, they somehow enjoy pain, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or marathon runners, right? And they get in it, they're like, feel the burn, and they talk about the runner's high and this, and I'm like, my goodness, I have, that's nuts.
Yeah.
I do not relate to that. I have never had a runner's high. I've never had a workout at gym. I was like, oh, woo, feel the pain. I love that. Give me some more, please. Like that. I got friends who do.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got friends that are into it, man. Like, they are all about it. And I'm like, you are a nut job. Like, that does not resonate with my experience at all. But it's a real thing.
Yeah.
And lots of people really enjoy it. And there's no shame around it. There's no embarrassment around it. They're not actually crazy.
No, actually, people think they're cool.
Right?
They wish that I wish I could get a runner's high.
Too. I'd be in a lot better shape if I got a runner's high. I bet, maybe I'd run, But alas, I do not. And so, no running for me. And then maybe a brisk walk. That's as intense as it gets for me. But what do the two have to do with each other, right? What does CrossFit and a runner's high have to do with pain and sex and maybe enjoying pain as a part of sex? What's going on there? So what's happening neurologically, hormonally, physiologically in the body in both cases is the same thing. So what happens is our body, under certain circumstances, releases what we call endorphins. It's our body's own natural kind of painkillers of sorts that create a bit of a high. They're similar to morphine in their nature. They, create a euphoria that enhances a sense of well-being and light. And so folks that, if you've ever gotten a runner's high, you know exactly what it is I'm talking about, that when your body pushes through a given threshold of, it's not immediate on your first mile of your run and that, but when you push past a certain threshold, you can feel the rush of that high kick in as those endorphins release in your body. Or if you're a CrossFitter nut job in that, then you know
all
the
respect
point.
To CrossFitters.
All respect to CrossFitters. My good friends is CrossFitter,
we love
so
them.
And he's a nut job. So I have some personal experience with this. But I know you guys are proud of it. The CrossFitters, they're like, yeah, we are. It's no insult there. But at that point in your workout, where you push yourself, where you start to really feel jazz and feel those endorphins flowing from it. The same experience folks can have with certain kinds of impact play or other kinds of pain as a part of a sexual experience that then amplifies their arousal and their enjoyment of the sexual experience. And that's not for everybody, just like a runner's high isn't for everybody, or being a CrossFitter isn't for everybody. But for some people, that's a really fun intensity that's a part of their sex life that they enjoy experimenting with and playing with and integrating. And it's not any crazier than being a CrossFitter. It's not any crazier than being a marathon runner. It's the same underlying physiological mechanisms and systems that are at play and can be a really enjoyable thing for some. So that's not a prescription for you to enjoy that activity, but it's a permission, it's a freedom. We want to neutralize the shame around that by creating some understanding about what's happening there.
Yeah. And I think when, if we've ever heard about this in Christian circles, it's only like people in the world doing these things. And I just want to take it back and be like, just because they know about it doesn't mean it belongs to them. Like, God actually created all of our bodies and we can take back what we want.
That's right. So is pain play, playing with, pinwheels or clamps or flogging or anything of that nature, is that for you? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Doesn't matter. The point is, it's within the bounds of the framework of God's design and the sexual playground that He created for us. And if you want to experiment and you want to play in that part of the playground, God bless you and enjoy that and have a lot of fun doing that with your spouse. And if you don't want to play on the jungle gym, if you don't want to play in that part of the playground, that's great too. Yep. That's perfectly okay. There's no compulsion or demand or need to do that. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing prude about you if you don't want to play in that part of the playground. That's okay. Just freedom. And it's a good thing. Man, we got so much. We're just cracking the surface of all that we talk about in this chapter. We're going to talk about one more piece, and then we're just going to bust this over into part 2. Because who wants to cut short the kinky chapter?
I know, right? There's lots to talk about. Our goal is okay, what are people talking about? Let's tackle all of that. Let's at least touch on all of those things.
If anybody ought to be talking about sex, it ought to be God's people and all the different pieces. And we want you to be able to get the tea from a faith committed, biblically grounded, as well as scientifically informed approach. And so this is the Road to Happiness podcast, and it's your place for getting that. So got one more piece that we want to look at. It's like this fantasies that involve embarrassment or humiliation or taboo kinds of things or risky type things being kidnapped or something of that nature. Like, these are super common tropes and themes in women's fantasies that a lot of women feel some conflict around.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
They're like, why is that a turn on for me?
I need to pray this through. If I was holy, I wouldn't be interested in this.
What is going on there? Why is this the case? It just feels not right.
Yeah.
Because, there's certain things that you would really want in real life.
Yeah.
Right? They'd be terrible or mortifying in real life. And so there's this conflict of, why is it in fantasy this really turns me on and I feel really excited about it, when in reality I would hate this. I would hate this.
It would be terrible.
I would never want this to happen. The answer is actually really similar to pain.
Yeah.
Because what it comes down to is a physiological cocktail of hormones that get released in our body that, under conditions of consent and safety, our body interprets as exhilarating as opposed to terrifying.
Yes.
Right. That in conditions where it's not consent and it's not safe, then the same things, that is, these things in reality, if they were happening, would be mortifying or terrible for us. But within a fantasy context, our body knows it's imagination.
Yeah.
Our body knows that it's not reality. And we are engaging in the fantasy of it. And so there's consent. We're choosing the fantasy of it. And there's safety, because we're totally in control and it's just in our mind. It's not real. And we can stop it at any point in time, right? And so that consent and safety causes our brain to interpret the hormone concoction that is released in response, the adrenaline, the cortisol, the neuroepinephrine, the endorphins that get released from these imagined scenarios, get interpreted by our brain as exhilarating as opposed to terrifying. And so that's chemically, neurologically, what's happening, and why, when these scenarios are mixed with arousal, that supercharges the arousal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just, neurophysiology at its finest. Who knew neurophysiology could be so sexy, right?
So sexy.
And so practical in its nature. So, no, just because you have a fantasy of maybe being kidnapped and engaged sexually in that context, that doesn't mean that you want to be raped. Yeah. Like, that's not some sick part of your psyche or trauma in the background.
Because that's the fear.
I know. People are like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And that. It has nothing to do with a want for those things in reality. It's the adrenaline and the norepinephrine that causes the heart to race in that scenario. When mixed with arousal and consent and within the context of safety, it supercharges. It's like gas on the fire, the hormone cocktail around those things, which is why it can be a super big turn on and a fantasy that the brain returns to and it feels good about. Same sort of things sometimes with like embarrassment type scenarios that may take place that somehow have arousal connected with it. So this is just what's happening within the body. And there's this forbidden fruit kind of dynamic and novelty component to it also, that, things that are novel to us or unknown or taboo and are forbidden in nature, that create that same cocktail in our nervous system, that kind of anxious, nervous excitement that our brain can interpret as anxiety and fear and something bad, or can interpret as exciting. Neurophysiologically, that's almost identical. Being terrified and being super excited.
Yeah.
It's an interpretation that our brain makes based on other factors. And so, yeah, that's what's happening. That's why you might find that kind of fantasy very exciting.
Yeah. And if you do, that doesn't mean you're on a slippery slope to the pits of hell.
No, it doesn't. Maybe you are on a slippery slope.
We're not to say that.
But this doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
This isn't an indicator of that. I'm not the judge in those matters. So, you got to talk to Jesus about those things. But I can tell you that this doesn't mean that.
Yep.
Woo! We have covered a lot of ground here. There's a lot of kinky stuff we've covered.
A lot of kinky stuff.
It is a lot of kinky stuff. If you're still listening, you're going to love the next episode. So we'll see you again in the next episode. Thanks for hanging out with us.